What is up, everyone? Benny's dad here on Benny the Finance Dog channel, and just going through this chart with me series. Obviously, we're going to go through what to kind of expect in this back half of the week from what I'm seeing in some of the charts. Apple, Google, Microsoft, NVDA. NVIDIA has earnings tomorrow, so we're going to be talking about just the overall chip sector a little bit, getting into what some of my predictions are for earnings and where I could potentially see some good plays for those of us that don't have, $5, $6, $7,000 to spend on an NVIDIA contract, where to find other opportunities in the market for, a smaller account. So just without further ado, we'll get started here. As always, going to be sharing my screen. I'm going to look at Uber first to kind of kick us off. So Friday, I talked about this coming back to retest here. Let's get some music playing, you know what I mean? Let's go ahead and freaking pop that off. So Friday, I talked about there being a retest of the 6750 level before we see further moves down, right? And we've kind of been watching this happen on Uber since. If we click over to the hourly, we'll see a little bit more of what I'm talking about here. You can see that Uber obviously dumped pretty hard that Wednesday. If we zoom in here just to make life easier, we came up, retested this 67 on Thursday and just been kind of in a downtrend since. So Friday, we obviously broke this level, came down here, tested 65, broke through, pushed back up, and then just continued on down. So now I'm looking for a break of the 63 level to see if we can't, continue to the downside. It's been a pretty strong support, right? We have a number of touches over here, come back down, just starting to touch it here. We could get a bounce up before continuing down. We also have this nice kind of trend line forming. We just take our drawing tool. We can see, right, trend line. We can come up, retest this, and then continue back down. So that's definitely on watch for Uber. I don't really love downside plays. Like, I feel like stocks are supposed to go up, right? Like, so I feel more comfortable playing, upside moves and just waiting for my levels to hit. I like that this is kind of coming down here. We could see this bounce and go up, but pretty strong downtrend and increasing volume on the daily. I wouldn't be surprised if we come back down. Really looking for that 58 level. That 58 is kind of like, hey, this is where I want to load up and go crazy. But I also want to see, 60, 62 get tested and break through. If we kind of zoom out and just look a little bit further back, we can see that the daily here gets really extended, right? So like we're up 100% in 6 months. We're up 400% in the last 18 months, right? Which is where I'm kind of getting that 58 level. But if we really just focus on this portion right here and draw a new fib, right? Low to high, we kind of get some of the same levels that we're looking at here as a test. But you can see 61 is going to be a level just on that most recent run. We're looking for areas of confluence. And what I've noticed in charting and everything else involved with trading and looking at technical analysis is that oftentimes you won't see things come to the exact level that you projected. It just rarely happens, right? But if you get in confluence area where you're getting multiple levels kind of signaling this is where it could be, then that's a pretty good indicator of where you can kind of enter a trade with high confidence. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're looking at Uber to the downside here. It could very well bounce at this 61 mark, this halfway mark. 60 is a very good mark, and then continue to the upside. But the way that it's set up and coming off the run that it's been on, I'm more of a mindset that we're going to see this continue to the downside, down to 58. Test 60 as a nice strong psych level rather than stopping at the 61.20 and reversing to the upside, right? So that's my My load the boat is going to be 58. Like if I see 58 hold pretty strong, that's kind of where I want to enter like long-term leaps, buy shares, things of that nature. Until then, though, if it holds at 60 or 61, I'll be probably looking to play through the next earnings in kind of like a 6 or 4 month hold on Uber. But overall, like stock is very clearly in a downtrend. It's been downtrending since February when it hit the new all-time highs. So we need some type of catalyst to turn it around before we're able to really confidently play to the upside. In the meantime, you can go for little short downside moves. Like I'm not mad if you are playing this down like a 61 put, right? That's not a bad call here if you want to play like a short-term 61 put on the option chain. Feel free if that makes sense for your strategy, right? As I get the options chain pulled up here. Probably not May, but like let's say a July 19th 60 call at 127 right now. Like I'd be willing to risk that because, you know, we're coming in. Delta's only at 26%. Like we don't feel like super strong that that'll be in the money. But if you want to play it to the downside for a bit, like I don't see why not. And especially if you're holding Uber shares, that'd be a great play to just kind of hedge any losses that you're going to see in your long term by playing some short term puts, especially in something that's as strong as this currently is to the downside. So kind of moving on here, the next one I want to talk about is going to be Tesla. So let's take a look at the Tesla chart. Strong move from Tesla today. We're still in this like overall down. We're kind of fast forwarding what we're seeing from Uber into Tesla, right? Like, so Tesla came down, tested this 61 like fib level a couple of times, broke through pretty strong, right? Then came back up, had a strong uptrend this like few weeks at the end of April, and kind of just been trading sideways. You see this like overall trend line that's been tested a number of times on the daily, and we're probably going to come up and test it one more time. We also have a huge psych level at this like 190. I think that if we're zooming in on the hourly here, we broke this little hourly trend line going down. Hourly trend lines are probably like the weakest that we'll see, but we could see this come back down, test this kind of like, this was support before, this 180, 178 level, right? 180, 178, whatever you want to call it, 180 if you want like whole levels, but it's more like 178, right? Was support, broke through, was resistance, right? And then continued to kind of be support in this sideways trade for a few days before we broke out to the upside. So I think if we come touch 190, we'll come back down. If we get all the way to 198, right, you'll probably see some sellers at the 200 level and come back down. Kind of have a long stretch before earnings or anything like that come into play. This one obviously has a really active leader in Elon Musk, so we'll continue to see how his actions continue to move the stock. But unlike Uber, we see Tesla kind of coming out of this downtrend and into like starting to turn around on that daily. And we love to see that. And in those instances, like we want to play the upside, where we still have a ton of room to the upside. So like if you got in at 140, good for you. But this, like having defended 165 so strong, I'm not mad at you going long here. Just knowing that you're going to face a couple of hurdles breaking through this downtrend, and then ultimately like somewhere at the 215 level is going to be another battle to fight, for sure. Moving on here to stocks that are seeing more upside. We had Apple, right? We talked about Apple on Tuesday and Friday. They had some good news. We're heading towards their like June WWDC event, which in my book, like I have Apple going to 200 by Independence Day. And so in my book, seeing Apple kind of trend up as we get towards the end of the May is nice. It could be a buy the rumor, sell the news type of event. Their WWDC, Worldwide Developers Conference, is where they're likely going to announce whatever innovation is new for Apple. That's going to be major and push them in the direction they want to go. On Friday, I kind of talked about this being bullish here, these three candles, as we kind of liked up, but closed still higher than this one. This candle obviously gapped down, but closed higher even after pushing up. And then we just continue to push up. So now we're at this like 78% level from the previous downtrend. We could see that hold and come down. But I feel very good about Apple just continuing to push up. The tech names are pretty strong. We're in an overall bullish trend. So if we could hold above this 190 level, maybe even come back down, test 190 and go, like that would be fantastic, right? Because this is previous resistance. I was talking about this being a BS head and shoulders, right? That they basically didn't hold, right? It came back right to the level that I had talked about before and went. So now the previous resistance is going to become new support. If Apple does get down to this level, this 190 level, I assume that it'll be defended, and boom, we're off to the races as we go into the last couple of bit of May and into June. So feeling really good about that one. Feeling good about Google as well, right? Google making new all-time highs as we head that way, right? I talked about this being a good place to enter and going, right? We missed this, bounce off the 23, boom, broke through this like previous resistance, never really came back down and tested. I'm pretty sure we tested in the pre-market and just kept going. I think for Google, if you switch back to the hourly we were just looking at, like you're gonna see a test of this 175 mark and then a go. 175 is a nice big psych level. We see this big pop on news over here, came down, basically consolidated right at the 175 before giving back a lot of gains. So we can see that this is a level that's of importance. We've had a nice clean uptrend since basically the last 2 weeks, week and a half. So we could see that continue into the holiday weekend, and then next week kind of dump a little or dump Friday. Hopefully 175 holds, an opportunity to get back in and go. We could also come back all the way down to this 170 level. I just don't think it's as likely we dump that hard and go. And then looking at where it could possibly go after that, I have this 193 marked off as a good target for much further down the line. Once we get through the holiday, I think there's going to be a sell-off this week post NVDA earnings, and we'll go from there. Which kind of brings me to the next overarching thing I wanted to talk about, which was going to be the big earnings that everybody's waited for today. So tomorrow we have the Fed minutes, which is going to shift the market a little bit, but really people are going to be waiting on the NVIDIA earnings. Once NVIDIA announces their earnings, if they are absolutely perfect and crush it, then they're going to be in a great position to go to the upside, make new all-time highs, and go from there. If we're kind of looking at the chart, though, I think that we are in a position to see this kind of retest. Like we took this retest here. Hold on. So we made new all-time highs in March and kind of been on a downtrend. It was a short downtrend. And then we've been uptrending since the beginning of April at the 750 level, mid-April, right? And just been cruising, broke through this like 23% level, came back down and tested it. This looks bullish to me. This looks super bullish, right? Had a big red day last Friday, whatever, pushed up, to basically close just shy of this 78 level, gapped up into Monday, like engulfing bullish candle today where we just closed at the high of the day. And then tomorrow we have earnings. So if you play earnings, I'm gonna switch up the music here because I need to make a good point here. If you are the type of person that plays earnings, Godspeed to you. feel free to gamble away. Like, it's uncontrollable, especially if you're playing options. What happens in aftermarket, you're either going to boom or bust, and hopefully it's money that you could do without. Looking at the NVDA options chain, it's like $4,000 for some out of the money contracts that expire on Friday. Like, that's quite a bit. I would not recommend doing that for any reason. I wouldn't really recommend it. If you are so inclined to bet on earnings, right, or you feel really good about it, NVIDIA will drag the rest of the chip market, semiconductor market with it. So in that sense, you can probably feel pretty comfortable playing one of the other options. So like if we look around, NVIDIA, I think if it reports poorly, we could come back down to this like 860 level, maybe even 836, right? We could come all the way back down to this. This would be like a golden buying opportunity, I think. If they have like 9 out of 10 earnings, we could see like this area being really effective as a buying opportunity. So that's like, I'm not hoping for bad earnings, but I'm just hoping for not perfect earnings. So it gives us a chance to get in. If we get perfect earnings, we'll break 1,000. We'll go up to 1,100. Anybody holding, great. Anybody looking to get in, probably won't have an opportunity. But my guess is that earnings will be less than stellar just because we've kind of been on a 1 month run. We need a little bit of a pullback. But again, making predictions about earnings is kind of a fool's errand. So NVIDIA, if you want to play it, great, do it. Really expensive options. For those of us with like smaller accounts that can't really afford to have so much on one play in terms of earnings, I would recommend playing one of they're called like sympathies. Basically, they're other companies in the sector that would benefit from overall good guidance on chips, right? So I think of like AMD, which if we pull up the chart for AMD, we can kind of see it kind of follows NVIDIA. It's been beat up a little bit more. The CEOs are literally cousins. The companies are literally cousins, right? And we see like AMD kind of consolidating around this level, which was a previous all-time high. But we could see NVIDIA doing the same thing. Like, it hasn't had as good as a run, right? Getting to new all-time highs is going to be a little bit more of a stretch. We seem to be kind of forming a head and shoulders pattern, or at least had one. So I think this really does need to get back down here more before it goes up. And it's certainly trending that way. So AMD is not really the one. But honestly, Taiwan Semiconductor, looking at this chart, it looks a lot closer to what NVIDIA's chart looks like. And in so, we feel, we, being me, myself, look at this. Look at this defense, right? We got a trend line here that we're bouncing off of. We have this 78 level at the 150 that we're bouncing off of. I would have loved to get in this like Monday morning, thinking about it. But I'm not willing to like risk on earnings. So I don't really want to take this play. But if I'm looking at this, right, like if we're going to get a leak up, right? Because I think the general consensus is that NVIDIA is going to do really well and send the market to an upside. But if you're looking at Taiwan Semiconductor, let me zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. But if you're looking at Taiwan Semiconductor, like this chart looks very bullish. But the stock price at 153 is a lot more competitive in terms of being able to get these options contracts for cheaper than NVIDIA, right? They're trading at like 1/10 of the size. So if you are inclined to do that, like play Taiwan Semiconductor over playing NVIDIA, which is going to cost you like an arm and a leg. Taiwan Semi, not so much. You can get further dated options. If you do want to play something for this week and feel pretty like, basically like gambling mindset, feel free to do that. If we look at the options chain, right, we can see plenty of people are doing that, right? Looking at the open interest, this is how many basically contracts people are holding right now. People are bullish on Taiwan Semiconductor, right? Almost 5,000, over 3,000, over 3,000. And we're looking at the put side, right? Not a lot of puts being held. So we can see like market sentiment is that this thing is going to be pulled up by NVIDIA's earnings, right? And at 217 or 131 or 228 or 140 per contract, it's in a much better position for those of you that have small accounts. And we could blow past basically and blow past this previous all-time high and make new all-time highs. 180 would be a target for like the end of the year. So if you wanted to, let's say earnings are poor and we go to the downside, right? Like that's more so what I would be looking to play, right? Looking at playing these 180 contracts should we get a pullback. That's what I'm looking for, more so than looking to do the short-term trade this week. It has to absolutely work on earnings and potentially having things go to zero. So that's how I would play NVIDIA's earnings coming up tomorrow. Hopefully you're able to watch this beforehand and save you some heartache. But you can also do the same thing for ASML, right? Chart looks a little weaker, right? More of a down pull, but kind of expensive. And SMH, as always, is the ETF. Now, if you do SMH, you'll probably be more protected from the downside. SMH trades very closely to NVIDIA. So if you're using SMH instead, I talked about this the other day about this box here being kind of like golden in terms of like wanting to buy a bounce off this trend line. We're looking, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4 touches of this like previous resistance that was right here that we only popped up of the last time we made new highs. But again, this looks pretty bullish to me. These like 6 candles last 6 days, of course, they look pretty bullish. If you pop into the hourly, you can see how hard these were rejected, if hard at all. But like we've been trying to get through this level, finally broke through, came back, tested it, didn't last long, broke back through again, and then it's been holding a cap. So you could also put SMH ones for the short term, or look for like I said, like a 250 January call would help you out as well. So like that's kind of how I'm playing NVIDIA. I think that the meme stock rage and everything is all over. Like if you're still in GameStop or FFIE or whatever people are aping these days, then Godspeed to you. But for me, like I think playing the January 250 calls on SMH are probably going to be a little bit more worth your time. Or playing Taiwan Semiconductor, same thing, playing 160 calls, because we're likely going to make a new all-time high based on NVIDIA's earnings, assuming they go well. And I would be quick to take profits this week. Just one last little overall note before we kind of head out is that as we head into the holiday weekend, I think people are going to be closing their positions early. So keep that in mind when you're kind of looking at your plays and whether or not you want to hold them in the long short term, I guess. Like if you buying something to play earnings tomorrow, earnings will come out after close on Wednesday. I would likely close those soon on Thursday rather than continuing to let them play out throughout Thursday and Friday, because I think we're already at a record low volume in terms of SPY trading. And I don't think that changes until we get through the Memorial Day holiday. So take my word for it. I don't think you want to be holding anything super volatile heading into the weekend or even into Friday. So like I'm not going to be trading on Thursday. I'm not going to be trading on Friday. Maybe I'll take Taiwan Semiconductor because I'm a glutton for pain. Earnings play, I don't recommend it. It's against my rules, but hey, you got to live a little. But let me know in the comments what you guys are doing in terms of your plans for earnings and what comes of it. Maybe you watch this after and hey Bears, you're an idiot. I played NVIDIA earnings and doubled my money because earnings blew out of the water. Or hey, I shouldn't have. But let me know in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we'll see you in a few days to talk about how the market changed.